compliance piece with that and working with Accenture,
there's a whole.
We are learning many more steps when it comes to federal compliance and how that works through the buying process.
Sure.
That will happen still with any other grant that comes up.
Mm-hmm.
So, not that I don't think staff that I have currently would be capable or not capable isn't the question, but rather I think that it would be good to have something or someone to support that can handle just this grant side of things. And also there's a project management, or I should say project administrative piece, where once something is approved, you have to follow the life of the project, being able to report on that and track the statuses or the
So
changes.
essentially it would be its own full-time job in itself.
I foresee it being that.
So you are looking for full-time?
Yes.
And when would you want it to start? As soon as possible?
I believe so. I think the need is now. There's a grant, the deadline has already passed.
Yeah, and that's a great thought, Brandy. The one consideration though, because we kind of kick that around, but with all these new federal grants going online, there's so many people out there applying for grants, and so it's super competitive. So I think it would be more beneficial for us to look at somebody that's seasoned and knows really how to write these things so that they're super competitive, as opposed to, somebody new that doesn't really understand the nuances, and we would be more competitive. But with her staff kind of doing some things that are related, there's probably folks in her office that could learn from the grant writer. And if we do need more than one person, because there's so many grants out there and we're super successful and we're getting these, maybe we don't have to hire another grant writer. There may be somebody that's in her office that they can train to get up to speed and to help that other person.
Is there another county that's received ARPA funds that has pursued this effort, like Tulsa County?
I do not know if anybody's utilizing ARPA money to fund this position.
No, I mean as far as getting a grant writer to assist them in that manner.
Well, according to our consultant, we're in the minority of counties and entities out there that they were surprised that we did not have a grant writer on staff that was doing specifically that kind of work for the county.
Is there a structure in which we could just contract that out, grant by grant?
So there is, when you're talking about roads and bridges,
Okay.
there's a component there that we see with those firms. There's grants for everything.
Sure.
So with different grants, what I have seen typically, and I've reached out to a lot of firms to ask about this, it's a person that you hire that develops this experience. It's really a creative writing piece, understanding federal compliance, and not necessarily something you go to school for and you create this business that's, we're grant writers, come hire us. So that's one thing that I've kind of been struggling with, because Stacy and I for about 9 months have been trying to go that avenue. Can we bid this out? Can we hire somebody in the meantime? And what I come across is positions for hire. Every time I try to search for somebody, it's like, this is a job opportunity, not a contracted office. Right.
And then if we were able to stumble upon a firm, because that was kind of our thought too in the beginning, was maybe there's a firm out there that is just kind of on call and we say, hey, find us these grants, we have these. But with having your own, you've got somebody that is dedicated and looking for that. Whereas there, with the increase in people looking for grants, where are you on their pecking order? Do they have other companies that are, utilizing them more, so you're a little bit further down the list with them or whatever? But that is something that's definitely a consideration.
A lot of the tasks, another reason for having somebody in-house rather than hiring out, a lot of the tasks that I find in searching related duties for this, is that it's somebody that pays attention to the meetings and the discussions and the projects that are streamlined, so that way it's something that may be addressed before it comes here, asking for internal knowledge, that it's kind of part of your internal processes.
Right.
And so you don't have that when you
and the other important thing is, and one thing that Chantel noticed as she was looking through is you can, and correct me if I'm wrong, you can hire, you kind of have two choices when you're looking for a grant writer. You can look for one that is just a creative writer, like what you mentioned, that's gonna help you be competitive to get these bids. And then once we're awarded the bid, then they're just moving on looking for other stuff. That's all they're doing. And it was about I think around 40 to 50,000 for that type of position, or the 50 to 60 is somebody that they're doing that creative writing piece, trying to get the grant, but they are also, after the grant is done, they're monitoring that grant to make sure that we're spending the way we should be spending, that all of our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed, which is where the folks in her office can really help with that, knowing Munis, knowing our systems and everything, that we can track that and make sure that from beginning to end of project, that we're doing everything we can to be in compliance with that grant.
The only thing that I don't know that maybe that you all could probably help with when it comes to hiring in this time, the numbers I pulled, I think were back in March. So I don't know how the salaries are kind of fluctuating now. I think there's been a lot of discussion about positions and salaries and things like that. But whenever one of you are trying to hire somebody at a certain dollar range, is 60,000 or 50,000 for these duties? Does that make sense to everybody else also? From my research, it's what I found, but I had one conversation earlier that made me to believe that just like everything else, in order to get what you want, you gotta pay more right now. So I was concerned with that, and I just kind of wanted to at least discuss it and make sure if we're good with that number, that's appropriate to start out with. I feel pretty good, but I haven't hired anybody in a while. I don't know what that's like.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Chantel? All right. Thank you. And thanks for all your work. All right. Where do you guys want to start?
I said we start with the sheriff, that's where we left off.
Okay.
Went back and spent time with our staff, of course, Mr. Freeman. A few comments and a motion to make.
So you got a new document that the sheriff's office is passing around.
Motion to receive document.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thanks.
This document was requested yesterday, by the group, and, it was just to show what the increase would be over each fiscal year, over the next 2 or 3 fiscal years, in the general fund. So this is what this document represents. You have a copy of it?
You have extra.
Yeah.
So Andre, can you kind of talk about?
I mean, I don't know how much we need to talk. Each year, the general fund increase is what we would ask for those options. And you'll notice in option 4, the numbers are a little bit different. I made that option kind of on the fly, so I apologize. A couple of my formulas were pulling in extra numbers. The numbers went down, so nobody can be upset. So that's kind of how I look at that. But you'll see we maintain the service fee pay parity in each of these options at the end of them. And the total increase to the general fund over the period of time is the same. So it just depends on the speed at which the general fund would like to absorb it.
And these numbers do include the 4 new employees.
4 positions.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And each option gets you at that level immediately.
Immediately. just while everybody's looking, that you were gonna start everything with the color of the opposing colors of attire that are at the table today.
Depends.
I did notice,
Okay. Are you wearing cream or white, Andrea?
Oh, and this
It
is
makes a
white.
difference. White?
I went to Oklahoma City University, so I
Go Stars.
Green or is it
That's
white?
gold buns or stars. We're there.
Well, we appreciate you breaking it out like this. It's really nice to see it laid out, see exactly what the general fund impact is year over year, and then ultimately the total general fund increase. I would make a motion that we propose option number 4 to the budget board alongside with our supplemental recommendation.
We have a motion for option 4.
Option 4.
Well, can you say how much that is?
Yes, for a total of $551,005.60.
Is there further discussion?
Well, Mr. Chairman, are we gonna do this, are we gonna do each department differently, or could we try to add to this?
What do you mean add to it?
Well, like other departments, like court clerk and assessor. Are we just doing this one at a time, or can we do it as a group?
It's the pleasure of the group. We can take them each individually or and do motions individually, or we can have discussion about all 3 and then make decisions from there, either individually or as a group. It's completely up to you guys. Whatever you want to do. There's currently a motion on the table, but
Well, in looking at the assessor and looking at the court clerk and realizing that I'm kind of new to the court clerk's budget and all that, but there's $398,845 for the court clerk. Yours was,
216.
not really sure what yours was.
Yeah, 216.
216. And the sheriff's deal, is this half of their ask?
yes, option 4 is half.
For this fiscal year, yes, the 551. It's a little more than that.
Yeah.
And we realize that we can only do 1 year at a time. We can't do 4 years.
Absolutely. This is much like we've done for the court clerk in the past, as far as the pay parity.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And my friend Mr. Sullivan came in here in the spring, and we said, well, we'll look at it in September. And I'd just like to say, if we could group 3, if we did it at a time, that we would ask for half of that 398 that we've asked for, 398,845, which would be 194,4. And I would entertain if the assessor was willing to do that too. We could vote on all 3 at once rather than belabor this meeting.
Well, as far as my motion, I have the information in front of me to which the sheriff's office has so kindly gone into great detail, breaking it down. I know exactly where it's coming from. I know exactly where it's going. I know what they are supplementing with it. We know exactly where this money's going towards. I feel comfortable making a motion based on the information that they provided for the sheriff's department only at this time.
I got you.
But I would love to hear from, the other departments that have asks on the table too.
Sure.
But
Individually. Sure.
yes. But my motion is just for the sheriff.
You were just talking
I
about your
was gonna-
conversation with the treasurer.
Yes, thank you. I guess I'll kind of change mine since we've got a motion on the table. To phase in pay parity, because it's over $1 million is one thing. To phase in full-time employees, M&O expenses, I think that sets a really bad precedence. I think that it's never been done, and there's a reason. There's another avenue, estimate of needs, coming back for those individual requests, things on watch list. We are not in support of option 1 through 4. What we were looking at is, the 1,051,000 pay parity in 2 years. So that's 525,503, and that's just, I know there's a motion to take care of first.
Well, all we're voting on today, because obviously we can't go anything beyond this fiscal year. The only thing we're voting on today would be, is FY '23, which is half of the pay period. It's not the M&O, and it's not the,
But to Christie's point, I understand what you're saying, but if we do vote on option 4, if I'm you, then whenever I come back next year, I'm saying, well, I know that you only did the 551, but this was the plan, and this is what we need to do moving forward. So I think what Christie's saying is, to manage expectations, she wants to split it out into separate pieces. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. But you are correct. I mean, if there wasn't a motion on the table and Christie made her motion versus Brandy's motion, the difference to your budget this year is negligible. I mean, it was a few $1,000s, I think.
$25,000.
So you're right. I mean, there's really not much of a difference in what you would get this year. It's just a matter.
Precedence.
It's the matter of what your expectation is for next year. Because this is just my opinion. We did this with the court clerk's office. If we adopt a phased approach and say this is the plan we're going to look at, unless circumstances change wildly, this group needs to stick. In my opinion, we need to stick to that plan that we did, unless circumstances change wildly. Now, budget board could change their mind, but I just think we should. So I do think what's important here is to make sure that what the expectation is for next year, not related to what you're getting this year, because both of those motions would be similar dollar-wise, if that makes sense.
Christy, do you have, I'm sorry, do you have a breakdown of what you were talking about?
Yeah.
I could withdraw my motion if you want to discuss that.
That's up to you. That's up to you.
Okay. I'd be willing to withdraw my motion to hear your proposal.
I think what my point was is that even like going forward, we would still have to submit this on an estimates of need for the board to approve. I mean, we obviously understand that there's no guarantee. I mean, beyond September 15th, whatever the budget board decides. I mean, I think even the court clerk, when they've done theirs over multiple last years, I think they knew in advance. I mean, I do understand what you're saying, but I mean, we're still going to bring this back to this board. I mean, I'm going to be sitting in this exact same chair and everyone will say, if you'll recall, and here's what our proposal is now, and you still have the liberty to say yea or nay. I mean, this plan here goes out beyond, my own elected officials next election. So I obviously understand that, that things could change.
When we sat around here Tuesday and we told offices to bring back what they wanted, several offices emailed, and when you made your presentation, Brandon, all that was mentioned was pay parity for 1,051,000. And to come in here on Thursday and have these options that commingle new hires and M&O, I just wasn't comfortable with it, nor was Mr. Friedman. And I know we're willing to help with the pay parity on the 1,051,000. Was it $5.60, and phase that in 2 years. That'd be $525,503 for this year, with the intent to do the same for next year. The overall raises that you were asking for, we all see the bottom line. So that's what it comes down to. That's why we phased in the court clerks. Their original ask 5 years ago was well over $1 million as well. And no one's disputing what you're trying to get to. No one is discrediting, what these officers and the people in the sheriff's office should be making. The 1,051,000 $5.60 would be a 20.7% increase in 1 year. And that's for civilians, and in law enforcement, 22.4%. With the 8.5%, and if we phase this in 2 years, this first year you're going to fund 14.6% of the civilian increase of 20, and then we're going to fund 15.4% of the 22% that you were asking for.
Can you repeat those numbers for this building, because I don't think that's right.
You're over the pay that you're going when you're going from 29,478.60 to 35,584.28. That's an increase of 6,105.68.
Okay, hold on 1 second. So currently civilians make 29,472. You said. You're talking about when you add in the COLA. You have
take
to be,
the difference. Well, you take the difference of what they're currently making to their new annual salary. So
Correct.
You're wanting to pay $6,105.68 more.
Mm-hmm.
Divide that by the current.
Okay, I'm following you. I just meant.
It's the 20.7.
I just meant because you said something about the pay parity. The pay parity is not 20%. The COLA plus the pay parity is, and I just wanted to be clear on
Oh, no, I guess I was, okay, I see what you're saying.
that. Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure that it's clear.
Yeah, it's a 20% increase.
Yes, with the 8.5%.
And what I'm proposing is gonna fund 14.6% of that. And the increase for the law enforcement was 22.4, and we would be, with this proposal, we're funding 15.4. And then pick the rest up next year. I'll go ahead and actually make that a motion.
I would like to make a few comments.
Okay.
Some of that is, you stated yesterday in regards to revenue sources available to us for funding either jail or other services. I'm just kind of looking at the comparisons that you use for the surrounding counties, that I want to make it clear that those 3 counties that you used in your comparisons all have dedicated tax revenue sources to fund law enforcement, which Oklahoma County does not have. And then looking at the other cities, I know the city of Oklahoma City, per their news releases, has an extra additional $100 million of match tax revenue from sales tax. Now, where that plays into their aspects of determining salaries for their officers is beyond my knowledge. But I do think that some of those numbers may be skewed to that level just because there are additional revenue sources available to those entities that we do not have. And in my talks with the assessor, Mr. Stein, our concerns are that we may not have tax bases in place for support of these types of changes in the future. And I say that only because the things that we're dealing with now, that I made the comment yesterday that it takes, to generate $1 million of general revenue, it takes $100 million investment in a new property. That would be the equivalent of 100 homes valued at $1 million a piece. That is not a realistic number. It would be also the equivalent of the Amazon Prime Center that's at the airport. That's a $100 million facility. That took a 3-year period to build. So our concern is that our resources are limited to the point that I don't know that we are financially at the point that we would be able to consistently fund these changes. I know we're only looking at this year only, but there's also things that come into play that if you think about some of the substantial properties that are going on the tax rolls now, the Amazon Center was new. The Omni Center went on this year. First National Tower will go on. There's been an investment in the Innovation District in OU Health Sciences with even a grant of 200 and some million coming in there. But those major developments, besides the Amazon Distribution Center, are all located within TIF, meaning that the county will not receive any general revenue from those facilities. So these substantial properties that are coming onto play are not going to come in to generate revenue for us, for your sources or any of our other sources. So that's another concern of ours. And in the last 2 years, the assessor's office has worked with legislative issues at the Capitol that are somewhat limiting our abilities to assess property. Those are beyond our control. The latest one was a senior valuation freeze for senior property owners, regardless of income, that we would freeze their value of their property for tax purposes. That's questionable that it can limit us to a $3 million hit. Statewide, it's going to be significantly larger than that. There's been discussions of providing exemptions for people with disabilities. Currently, the only disability exemption now is for 100% disabled American veterans, where it's a complete exemption of property taxes. But there's talk of providing an exemption based upon your level of disability, 5%, 25%, 50%. Those are unknown. I cannot run futuristic numbers or numbers for that. So there are things that are implying that are limiting our ability to assess property, which affects our general fund. And that's our concerns is, are we writing checks that we're not going to have the ability to pay or cash them in?
So all those things you said, how long has the assessor's office known some of those things? And the reason I ask is because it's my understanding that you all have supported the court clerk's increase of almost $1.5 million over the last couple of fiscal years, and the assessors voted yes every time. And so here we're in a situation where, here again, and kind of what I brought up the other day is that I feel like the sheriff's office is being limited, and not limited, but maybe, almost punished in a way because of the size of us. For example, so if we are, today, for example, if the motion on the table is 525 or 550,000, the court clerk's ask is 400. Are you guys in support of that? Are you in support of the 216 for your own office? Because there's the same $500,000. And so actually it's a little more than that. So my question becomes, if you've been in support of other offices that have increased really the exact same amount of money, again, the court clerk's office, for example, and I'm not picking on the court clerk, but their budget has gone up since FY21 to this current year's ask, not including this amount, $1,452,435, which you were in support of every year. So it's just, to me, you've got all this information, which most likely is legit, but to me, it comes across as, again,
I'm not saying I'm in favor of the court clerk's position or even ours.
Well, you have for the last 5 years is what I mean, so.
I'm saying this year, this year's completely different. I'm looking at this year only and then where we're looking at forward. Prior decision, the revenue sources were there. I had no issue with dealing with that. My concern is moving forward.
This is new information that it's breaking news since April or since.
No, I talked about some of that even in April, that we're limited on some of our abilities to raise revenue based upon the assessment percentages.
Sure.
That's just a given by nature. And I'm looking at 3 of your options here are clearly over $1 million. 3 of those 4 options are. That's all I'm relating it to. I'm not saying I'm in support of either one or not at all.
The $3 million that you mentioned for the property tax exemption for those over 65, that is a fairly new item that's been discussed.
Yeah, and it was defeated. They are trying to gather signatures now to place it on the November ballot. I don't think they're going to make it, but that will come back again.
Yeah,
as another bill. It will come back.
So is there an estimation that less the interest for the ARPA that our income next year would actually drop? Is that what the assessor's office is estimating, or?
I'm just at this point in time with the provisions that are in place, I do not see a drop in the revenue. No.
Okay.
But knowing that these things are coming on play, I just want everybody to understand that we see all this development going on around us, these major projects coming on to play, that even though they're there, we're not receiving the revenue for them. I just want everybody to understand that so that they don't see that or have that expectation that this giant facility is going into place. We're getting a lot of money for that. In reality, no, we're not.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why we went back and retooled and tried to spread everything out. And just for the record, the 4 new people and the M&O ask was absolutely in the estimates of need presented in April. We still believe it is a need, but when we looked at the supplement that was published, we did, as I said yesterday, we didn't necessarily bring it up Tuesday because Tuesday was about what is our request from the supplement. instead of asking for everything that we had asked for in April, we had sat down and looked at the funding that was available, what we thought the county could absorb, what we could absorb, so that we were, again, I feel like I say it in every meeting I'm in front of every board, to try to be a team player, because we are part of the county, not a standalone entity. So we don't wanna just walk in and say, give us all you got. It's not a fair request. So, we're having to do some real financial planning on our own side to make sure that the amount of approved money that we have will be able to meet all of these other requirements. I mean, we're trying to do everything that we can. The sheriff's position is that this raise has to happen. If it means that,
And we're not disagreeing with you in that matter. I want you to understand,
Right.
I'm just doing my due diligence to make you understand that there's possible implications that are unknown to us at this point. But more than that, I want everybody to understand this, your comment yesterday, that there are all of these other agencies or entities in your listing have some additional revenue source that may have some play in that value that you assign as
Absolutely,
an annual salary.
they do. And I don't know
That
how
we
to
don't have
overcome
that.
that,
We don't
but
either.
they still
And
leave
I really
for
wish,
those agencies.
I think that kind of comes back into play, the importance that that's going to have to, at some point, become part of the discussion. Because I don't know that we have a tax base that's capable of presenting these numbers for not only your office, but other office, including the trust. I mean, we haven't even looked at that issue yet. So that's my concern.
And let me just say respectfully that the court clerks increases over the years have been for pay parity in this building. Just this building. And we thank you for it, really good. Having just started up there this year, it's an awesome group. Each department is awesome. I believe it. Love everybody in this building. So, and outside the building too. County is family, but it was for pay parity in the building. So,
But who would you have us pay parity our deputies to?
well, if
No,
you weren't here the other day, I think you may have been here.
I sneak into
When
it.
I said I think we need some salary studies, so we can,
Yeah.
I think it's only fair, is what I stated, so.
I think it takes a special person to be an official like that. That's not everyone has cut out to be. I'm thankful that we have them. And I don't disagree with your numbers. I'm just trying to find a way to get there. So,
Do you have a recommendation?
a dedicated revenue source outside the general revenue is the only thing that I can, and that's not going to be something immediately that's going to help you. That's going to take a substantial amount of time and effort and cooperation with other entities.
Yes. It is. Okay, we have a motion on the table.
Could you repeat your motion, Kristen?
Sure. That we would address the sheriff pay parity of $1,051,005.60 with funding $525,503 of that this year, fiscal year 23, and with the intent to do the other half in fiscal year 24.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You talked about you're comfortable with sort of tiering in or putting a plan together for pay parity, but not for new employees with an M&O. We did that because the pay parity for the service fees is actually higher than the M&O, and so we were trying to use a smaller number, and it's about $33,000. I mean, it's not a huge number, but every little bit makes a difference. So would you be, because again, I know we can't budget or put anybody on the hook for future years, but again, if we're looking at a plan, because I can't be the one who gives a pay parity increase this year, and then 2 years from now, I tell the deputies who put their lives at risk every day that they don't get it anymore. It was just for 2 years. So would you be willing to include the service fee pay parity? Because that's not part of the $1,051,000. That's an additional $290 and change. as part of that.
I'm not gonna amend the motion. I know the ARP stuff in your slides yesterday said that some of the ARP of 3.1 would go towards, your slide was addressing that it would
that
go
was
for
our
that.
plan.
So
Again, we were trying to come together and figure out a way to make the money work for everybody.
I understand. I know you said your increases that you asked for of 2.6 in the spring.
Mhm.
We're giving you $520, $500,000,
Mhm.
and you've got ARPA 3.1. I think,
But we only have it for we have it until it's gone.
right,
Which
we understand that.
we have
We
it until it's
understand.
gone.
We
So,
understand.
so if we're looking at a 4 or 5 year period, what I'm asking is, since we know that money is gone, if we're gonna continue to cover it, then if we're looking at the plan that this particular team says will support this going forward, although we recognize that it still has to be part of the EON process, et cetera, all of the appropriate legal things, I see you, Aaron, that it would be considered as something that would eventually be covered. Because right now, it's not part of the, we're not asking you to cover it because we had the 4 new employees moving over to general fund because their positions are typically general fund positions. They were part of the EON and the general fund that was not fulfilled because of the flat budget.
There are so many positions people ask for and do not get.
Sure.
And if what I've heard correctly before is that your staff has increased. I mean,
Well, and I think what we can do here is what Christie's doing is
this is my.
splitting it out so that, those are 3 distinct items: pay parity, new positions, and then pay parity for a special revenue non-general fund account. So if we split those 3 apart and consider those 3 separately, you're considering the pay parity for general fund with your motion. That doesn't mean that somebody else can't make a motion to consider the other 2 items separately from this, but it would be cleaner probably having those discussions all separately. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table. Are you clear on what the motion is?
525, 503 to the sheriff for pay parity. And that's of the 105, 1005.
$1,051,005.60. Just happened.
Okay. We've got a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. We've got a motion and a second. Let's go ahead and do a roll call. District 2.
I don't want to not address the other needs that your department has as far as the other things that you're talking about that this is not a part of. But I do want to make sure you get this pay parity. So if we have to address them separate, like Cody mentioned, we'll address them separate. And so I will vote yes.
Clerk?
Yes.
Treasurer?
Yes.
Court clerk?
No.
Assessor?
I would say no, with the understanding that this group does not have the final say. That I would say, actually, if this measure fails, I would ask that you do present it to the budget board. Beyond this group, if this measure fails here.
Sure.
Yes.
District 1 is a yes. Same caveats that Brandy had mentioned. All right. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 motion passed. So we will include that in the recommendation. Okay, either the court clerk or the assessor, do you guys want to go? You've not
I'll let
had
Mike go
robust discussion.
On our items list, I think Danny was. What? Sorry.
Where?
503?
Yeah.
Oh,
525, 503.
sorry. Well, prior to the meeting, we were asking Danny about, I think there's maybe some unsure or some unclarity of that number. That 216 number.
Yeah, let me go back to the notes. I can pull up your estimate needs, kind of figure it out here, unless you've had a chance to. No.
So the biggest amount of that M&O increase that you're requesting in 106 is the just appraised, the 94.5.
Right.
And is that online yet? If you guys are, okay.
So yeah, so this was the difference. This got approved. So what you're saying, Marcy, is right. So that's not that total amount. And 1160 also got approved. Let's see, 1160 on this list.
1160 was it that one? That was down under
Oh,
capital.
I'm sorry. That was
Yeah.
capital. Okay, good.
Computers.
So we can take it out of here. That changes that total amount. Does that look right?
Yeah.
See it heading on back there.
I was wondering if I was in some twilight zone because I knew that was already,
Up and running.
yeah. I was just wondering how we did it without having the money for it.
Yeah.
So we got the money,
Because
right?
we were looking at it going,
Thought we did it.
I think that was approved. I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
Yeah, I think it was just this form I was picking up. It was over here and then took it off. Never mind. This is right.
So really the 122, 238 is the watch list.
Yes. 2, 2, 3.
I figured that was for 2 positions. That
The 69. We can pull this back up here.
Full-time and part-time.
Yep. Full-time and part-time.
in our discussions, I think in light of where we are with the watch list number, that we're comfortable probably working through those issues, knowing that we may come back next year and ask for that again.
So you don't want it on the watch
So I
list?
think we can just, yes, we'll pull it from the watch list and come back next year. Yeah, that'll help somehow, some way.
Okay. Rick, you get the floor.
Thank you. Is that 3.8? What's our bottom line? What's available?
1.38, and then if you take out the ARPA $2 million interest, that what's
Is the
1.8?
1.8? Okay. So, is the goal? Excuse me, Cody. I'll ask you, Mr. Chairman. Is the goal of this group looking at the ARPA money? Is it's one-time money, or to be used for one-time expenses if it's realized?
I think that $2 million is potential one-time money.
Right.
Yeah, because it could be less than that. It could be a little bit more, just depending on how long that money sits in the account, not spent, which is why we were just kind of looking at the 1.8. Now, we do have to make notation that of that 1.8, we already recognize that our vicinity bill may be significantly higher. We got legal that may be significantly higher, both on our end and the trust end. So spending down all of that 1.8, we've got to consider these other items, the election board and that kind of stuff. But we still have maybe some wiggle room here a little.
Danny, do you have a total of the orange watch list items that Cody was talking about?
We can total that up real quick.
Is that what you were talking about?
861.
And so that 1.8 does take into account the 2 million that's currently parked in reserve, right?
Yes.
Well, that balance is 1.5.
But he adjusted it
I
on
got
this sheet
I-
up to 2.
Yeah, that's increasing the reserve by 479 to get it to 2 million. Yeah.
So, I mean, what's the goal for the reserve? Because I'm kind of a little lost when we talk about the bottom line. So, I mean, I obviously understand what that means by definition, but so if we don't want $2 million in the reserve and we actually want more than that in the reserve, why don't we just do that? That way we can take this number available down to 0. So I guess I guess that's kind of where I'm confused. It seems like the what we need to keep available is kind of a moving goalpost.
Well, so then I guess the question is everybody comfortable with the 2 million that we have in set aside in reserve?
What has been our history with?
Well, I think that depends.
EKG.
For traditional reserve holding in there for employee benefits, I think I'm comfortable with the 2 million.
Mm-hmm.
But when we've got all these other unknowns this year with the vicinity and all of that, $2 million is nowhere near what I would be comfortable having in that.
What would
in
you
that
be
account.
comfortable with?
I kind of seem to remember us at this point in time being in the 4 or 5 million walkaway numbers.
We have been.
We were at
From time to
once,
time.
like 5.6 one time, I believe.
It was end of,
This time of the year.
end of September last year, we had 3.1 million in reserve.
So when you said that, I was going to say around 3.
Uh-huh.
But
And then we ended the year with, oops, wrong. 2.4 end of June.
We're roughly $1 million under where we were this time last year. Under that number,
So Brandon, just
Well,
your conversation.
not counting the interest.
we've got 1.8. That if we did nothing else here, that would move up to reserve.
Actually, 3.8 would be
Yeah,
reserve.
it'd be 3.8.
3.
So there's currently $5.8 million sitting on the table, and I realize what the ARP interest means, but my whole point behind that comment was just that, I mean, if the assessor's office is comfortable with saying that we're not gonna lower our revenue by anything, I feel like we should just set the reserve number at whatever the group is comfortable with, or at least as a recommendation, and then move forward with that number.
Let's see what we have left over.
I feel like that's a prudent way to do it. If the group is concerned about the bottom line, which everybody is, I mean, nobody wants to see us going to the negative. But I mean, if we just need to find what that number is, and maybe historical reference is the best way, set that number, and then you know what number that you have to work with from there. I don't know
Yeah,
if that makes sense, but
it does, but the problem that we're up against right now is we're experiencing non-historic issues with, especially legal expenses and elections, utilities, that kind of stuff.
which most of that's accounted for on the watch list. The only thing it's not is the outside legal, right? To your point,
Yeah, we don't have outside legal.
which I mean, that's
We just
obviously
never had
is,
a number to
yeah,
put it, but I
right.
wonder
I
if we
think
need
we will.
we need to do something.
We do.
Just to have it there.
And we need to put an amount on there for self-insurance as well. We're recommending increasing self-insurance by $50,000, but we've already put a bunch in there so far this year. And if we're only tracking that 50, we need to have another amount on the watch list to finish out the rest of the year. So
I probably should have made the recommendation sooner, but it just seems to me that it'd be prudent to do it backwards in this case. I mean, start with a number that we know and we're comfortable with and then work from there.
Then see what's available
Right.
after that number.
Rather than putting Butch's seed corn in there at what's left over, I mean, let's work from the,
I think the 2 million is the minimum, just considering employee benefits. So then you take those other items that we want to make sure we have money hold away that's on the watch list that we hope we won't need, but there's a chance that we will have to pay it. That dollar amount needs to go on top of the 2 million.
So it's another 800.
Without considering
Uh-huh.
additional legal and self-insurance and whatnot.
I mean, it's good to have $1 million in there just for employee benefits. I mean, that should be right off the top.
the self-insurance.
And then self-insurance now, so whatever that number is for self-insurance.
Gotcha.
But I think historically, just employee benefits, just in case we have some big claims week or month, or we've got money setting aside where we don't have to start dipping into other departments' budgets.
Which has happened before.
Has happened before.
On the economic development, is it 300,000 a solid number, and we've only funded it so far too?
We funded 2, yes. It hasn't been BOCC approved yet, but we have that 100 on the watch list because it could potentially be 3, yes.
Initially, you said that 100,000 was needed, so
Yeah.
it's more likely.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't cleared BOCC, but
But more
yes.
likely that would be the number.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, absent a contract for that additional 100,000 on the economic development vicinity, whatever that bill is, we have to pay that. We don't necessarily have to increase on the other. But to your point, I mean, if we do get a contract with that increase amount.
Strong potential.
Yeah, could you, Denny, just for fun, could we put over here, the other orange? We're starting with vicinity to your left.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Can we put $1 million on that line for benefits? I think, Brandon, would that help to see that number, saying $1 million on that line? These are things that we absolutely, not all of them, but expect, right? We know we're gonna have higher utility bills.
We already have some set aside right now for employee benefits up in the reserve.
We do.
Okay.
Well, the total of those essentials that we foresee on the watch list, Danny Dunn, was the 861. So that's the number we should take and add
Well, I think
at the very least.
I think the criminal justice authority number, some of those may be needing to be orange as well, because if their vicinity bill goes up, I mean, it's just gonna go up. There's nothing we can do about it. They're gonna have to pay the bill.
Exactly.
I mean, we can get back to Mike's point about sales tax and, other revenue streams, but right now, it's not an option, so, I don't recall exactly what all was in that 937, if all of that needed to be orange or where some of it is optional. I've got it here somewhere. That 937 consisted of their anticipated increase to vicinity, anticipated increase with their electrical bill, and their estimated increase in legal expenses.
You want to hear from me, huh? You want me to stick my head in the guillotine?
You don't have a guillotine here.
We tried to get you to do it yesterday.
Well, I think for the record,
If you go first, you never have to go last.
yeah, that's great. No, I think, I would request or make a motion, go ahead and get it out there that, for the court clerk, in order to reach pay parity in the building and the continuing step that's been going on for quite a while, presentations in the spring, that Mr. Sullivan did and all that. And after being told that it would be looked at in the fall, I would appreciate your all's consideration in requesting, I'm gonna ask for half, so at 194,400. So that'll be my motion. 194,400. My head is in the guillotine.
So the 194,000 is half, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, the ask was 398,845.
But that includes, some M and O in there as well, for that 398 is a small amount.
The M&O was the same as last year. And the estimated need, was it not?
Yeah, 4,000 was for them.
What happened to us, just so you all know, in one section of our budget, the Supreme Court, we generate about $145,000 every year in copy fees. And the majority of that money goes to Supreme Court. Very little of it stays with Oklahoma County. And this year, the Supreme Court gave the judges money to lease copy machines. They did not give the court clerk money for copy machines, which our lease on that's like $37,500. We didn't get money for it, yet we generate the money that goes to the Supreme Court for that. So there's an issue with that. We have asked Judge Andrews, the presiding judge, has asked the Supreme Court to reconsider that funding. So we're waiting to hear back on that. But it's just an issue for Mr. Warren, which you all are well aware of over the years, has tried to reach pay parity for the court clerk staff. So
Rick, I know that when Amy was in here, the goal was to get the employees up to 17 an hour. And recall, I think that happened at the last pay parity. Do you know if that's the case, and has that changed?
that's our starting pay, and I believe that's 35,400. Am I right, or it's close to it?
35,360.
Yeah.
Yep.
And what we'd like is to get folks up to 36 or $3,000 a month.
So 35,360 times the 8.5% would get you up to 38,365.
Yep.
Are you asking an additional for that as well, or?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we got a motion, Rick.
Yes.
Is your, what, like has been stated, we're only making a recommendation for this year, and whatever approval goes through from budget board, it's only for this year. But is your intent on this 199 to move the number down to 199? Or are you looking at doing half this year and then wanting to do the remaining half next year? Just so that we're all on the same page.
That would be my intent, yes, sir. It's 194.4.
To phase in over 2 years.
Yes.
Now, when those numbers were put together in the spring, we were aware of the 8.5%, and we did factor, when we saw that they wanted to get to a certain level, we did take that into account.
Yes, and to that point, and I believe we all understand, if you have somebody making $4,000 a month, their 8.5% raise is going to be larger than someone making $3,000 a month. So it's the pay parity. Is the more you make, the farther away you get from the people that are just beginning.
You know how many employees this affects?
For our office, Brandon, there's a constant churn up there. We have 137 employees. I'm going to say it affects. I don't want to guess. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to guess.
It would be for the full complement of court clerks.
It'd be for the entry level court clerks, yes. In that we have a constant churn.
Did you say the number was half of the 398, 845? Sorry, what was the total?
Well, I can do it exactly half.
Okay, what was the total?
194.4.
194.
I didn't want to ask for $22.50.
Well, we put $3 on there, so that's
Sorry about that.
I feel, unfortunately, that with the information that we have to make this decision at this time is insufficient. I feel more comfortable making a decision of this nature when we have information that we can look at, such as this. A breakdown with like the different pay bands that you're intending, your structure as far as your positions and things, and where exactly this money is broken down to. Also how it is relative to the 8.5 potential increase.
Sure.
And those sorts of details really kind of laid out is something that I would like to see before
Sure.
I would feel comfortable making a decision like that. Just throwing that out there because I don't want to be perceived as not a team player because everybody at the county is valuable. Everybody.
Sure.
And we want to extend the same courtesy to everybody.
Right. And I can get that.
Rick, how long do you think it would take to get the kind of information that Brandy is wanting?
I could get it next week.
Okay.
Would it be something we could have you provide and then we address it in October? We put you on the watch list?
That's what I was kind of thinking.
Sure.
If you don't have time
I'm
to get
afraid
it
if we don't
for us
get
to
our
consider
recommendation
before
today.
September supplement, we could consider it as a recommendation in October for a general fund reserve transfer.
I think we really need to nail down a recommendation today.
Sure. We'll bring that for October meeting.
Okay, is there a second? You made a motion, right, Rick?
Yes, sir.
You wanna press your motion for a second, or do you wanna wait till October?
I'll withdraw and wait till October.
Okay. Well, you'll know in October.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate that.
Thank
Is
you.
there a motion to put it on the next one?
Yeah, let's get we've been doing that, yeah. Let's get a motion to put the 194.4 on the watch list.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Okay. Still have the jail trust up there. I don't know if anybody's had any more thoughts or anything, but I still think that the motion that I believe it was Danny made yesterday on a few of those items, that we should definitely look at funding up front for next year.
Can you remind us
the
of
known
those?
increases.
Right.
It was workers' comp,
Uh-huh.
it was employer, oh, there we go, it's right there.
That list right there.
Yeah, and so I guess there was the document and the notes they're not married. Is that a good way to state it?
So on the turnkey-based contract, it's going up $211,393. So,
Right.
and then the COVID amendments, $148,699.92.
So on the document, it shows that the detainee medical is actually going down, but they're just basing that it's going down off of what they spent last year with some of the COVID amendments on there. So what I did was just pull that 148 out because that was the COVID, but there's no notation on here about an increase due to the contractual, whatever it is, 2.5%, 3%, yeah,
So I
increase.
changed the request from 2.375 to 2.2, which would take out the COVID amendment, so we can request ARPA funding for that.
Right, so basically to take care of those two numbers, we would need to, instead of having that ARPA negative, they need an increase in that account by 211,393, but then you take that ARPA out, 8,700, an increase of 62,000.
Yeah, the
693 for your medical, and then you'll ask for the 148 from ARPA.
Yes,
We on the same page?
yes.
Okay, yeah,
Which we've already paid some of those invoices, the ARPA amendment invoices, so some of them would be reimbursed. And I know we're
Okay. So I think just, I would want to consider adding just another line in there. I mean, we can keep that notation on ARPA, but, well, if we keep in, okay, yeah, just put, medical contract increase 211,393. And the difference between that and the 148 is that 62,000. So that 509,000 are expenses that I think are pretty well known. They're contract based whatever. Yeah, fixed is, yeah, so.
What line is the medical contract?
I think it's 57, maybe? Yeah, 57. It's not clear from looking at the,
I think I was just looking for turn fees.
okay.
Yeah, I see it.
It's just because they had the base plus the extra amendments in there, and then we're looking at something else over on this other page. So it was just confusing a little bit, but we got it figured out. I appreciate Brian bringing that to my attention.
Do you feel like what we have listed here includes all of your fixed cost increases based on contracts that we're discussing now? Do you think that includes all of that?
I think so.
All right, is there any more discussion about the jail's request? Okay. Are there any motions?
I'll make a motion to fund $509,236 in fixed contract cost increases for the fiscal year 2023. That's the motion. My comment is, these are fixed costs, regardless of who's running the jail, or if the sheriff is still running them, we'd be funding. So,
Exactly.
Second.
Well, except for the workers' comp, because we would.
well, true, yeah. It would be with dollars.
But those are completely outside of their.
Sorry, the 66,076 is the liability insurance. Sorry, all I see up there is the workers' comp. The liability insurance went up at 66,076, and that is line 47.
You lost your chance, we asked you.
Yeah, there's already a motion on the table.
I can withdraw my motion.
I'm just being.
And that's another fix, that, you know,
Yeah, that is.
so that's another 66,000
Big red pepper.
$76.
They need us as spicy as.
Are you amending your motion for that?
Yes, I will amend my motion, I'm just trying to get it off. You don't even want to know the amount? You got it?
What's up there?
So on the liability insurance,
Maybe
you already
go to
have
Got
those, the
There's just gotta be
quotes, everything is in.
That's
You do, okay. Okay. All right. Christy, did you change your?
Yes,
motion?
I amended my motion to add in the liability insurance of $66,076 now for a total of $575,312.
You're still second? Okay. Brandon, second still stands. All right. Let's, I think this one was close yesterday, so let's do a roll call. District 2?
Yes.
Clerk?
Yes.
Treasurer?
Yes.
Assessor? I'm doing it again.
Chop liver.
I know. I'm coming back to
My
you.
head's still in the game.
Court
I
clerk.
think it's the two bald heads with the glasses.
Well, no, he was with the assessor and the treasurer.
Yeah,
And so it
he's
just
been
takes me a while to, I don't know how long it took me to not call Miles District 2.
Yeah.
My brain, as I get older, is harder to process.
I'll eat flour.
Court clerk.
Yes.
Thank you. Assessor.
Yes.
Sheriff. Yep. And District 1 is a yes. I'm sorry about that, Ray.
That's fine.
I'm sorry too that.
Sure.
Yeah, I want to appreciate it and thank you guys for considering that and taking that into advisement. One clarification I wanted to make from yesterday was on the 13% pay raise where, Mr. Owens had talked about being a 28% pay raise. When we came into the jail in 2020 and July 1st, we went to payroll and got all the base salaries of everybody. Started the base salary we were given was the the 27.29, which was the base salary for PO, and then we've increased that by 13%, which would be 39.1. And so the difference, what he saw was the 24. I went back and did some research last night, trying to figure out where that come from, because that was not the numbers we were given from payroll. So we looked at that, and I think the number he may have had was prior to February of 2020. In February, the sheriff gave a $3,000 across the board raise to the sheriff employees at that point, which raised that from the 24 whatever to the 27, 20. And that's where we come into our 13% pay. I just want to kind of clarify that so that people won't think we're being untruthful. I looked and spent a lot of time last night trying to figure out where our differences were.
Okay.
And where we got our numbers and where we got our base salaries from. Now it's all payroll.
Okay.
All right. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
But the employees that are over there, that were there then, got that rate. That was before you guys took over.
Yes, that was about 6 months prior to us.
But they did have that portion of raise.
Yes, and that was until I did the research last night. I did not realize that had been a salary increase prior to us getting there. So, anyway, just a little clarification.
Okay, appreciate that.
So what's our bottom line number, Danny? 1261?
What do we have left?
Well, one thing that we haven't done anything with yet,
Mm-hmm.
and we just talked about it briefly and recently, but that would be the grant writer position.
Okay.
I really just, after sitting and thinking about it for a while and all of the funding opportunities that are out there, and we've talked about this several times that we need other funding sources, and just from a road district standpoint, we got all the access roads out there by the turnpike that we built at some point and all of that, and we've got other roads and bridge projects that we don't have enough money to be able to do those all like we would want to do them, but there's infrastructure money out there. And so while Stacy Trumbo can help us some trying to get some of those grants, the process has changed a little bit, the criteria and everything. So having somebody that understands a little bit more how to answer some of those questions would help us. But beyond that, I'm sure that there's other offices and departments that could really, really benefit from it. It may not be, we're not talking about salary dollars, but we're talking about, equipment and programs and stuff that'll help our processes. I think that it's something that we should really, really, really strongly look at.
Do you feel like a position such as this would be a position that, like, say, for example, in October of 2020, when we had the ice storms and the districts applied for FEMA reimbursements for our expenses for that natural disaster, would this position be such that could be available to assist us with such projects such as that?
I don't see why they wouldn't be able to.
Yes, so I'm familiar with that and what you guys had to do
Yes.
for your process. And
Yes.
my thought is that would be your point of contact, if not trying to lead it. for the department, it would be your go-to, right? Because at that point, it was me and you, and it was David Barnes, and we pulled in commissioners. And so I agree that all those key players are important, but you have somebody in the middle that's coordinating it and probably processing it.
And is an expert in that field and not
That's the
just
goal.
kind of, baptism by fire type thing.
We were fortunate to have Tex Cobb on our payroll.
I know.
He,
He's
yeah.
fabulous.
the state was like, how did you guys get your stuff to us this fast?
Mm-hmm.
It was like, I mean, he just,
Quit bragging.
Do you still have
no, it's, yeah,
him
he's,
still on your staff? Does he want to be our new grant writer?
well, I don't, the creative writing piece, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if he'd be interested in it, but from that back end side,
Yes.
he works with Augie a lot, so he
Yeah.
really understands Munis a lot. So
Down on a
it was
very
just,
technical level.
yeah. So we're lucky that we have, so it's,
Mr. Chairman, who is this person gonna report to? What elected official?
I would think that there's all of us around the table, I think, can probably think of something right now, if not now, over the weekend, that your office would benefit from a grant writer. So I personally think, even though I'm a BOCC office, my personal thought is that it would be best to be in a budget board office where she works for the budget board, and so it would just, to me, it just seems to make more sense from that standpoint. But secondarily, the support staff that she has in there. I mean, if we put this position, kind of like what Kelly Thomas does, kind of on her own BOCC employee that answers, is managed by HR, but kind of on their own. If we did that, there's limited backup to be able to help with the tracking and all of the other stuff. Whereas in Chantel's office, there would be the ability to help that person out and maybe not have to have 1.5 people do it or 2 people do it. We can have some of her staff help. And who knows, it may go so well that she does come back and we're all like, hey, let's get 2 more because they're getting us millions of dollars a year in these projects that we couldn't have. I mean, hopefully that's a conversation we have down the road. But I think right now, that's something that we wouldn't have to really staff up. We just, add a person that's an expert in that field, and then Chantel and her staff knows Munis and knows all the procurement side, and so they'll be working side by side through all of that. Anyway, even if they were working in another office, it just makes sense that they would all be right there.
Your supervisor's Butch Freeman, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I guess I should defer to Christina.
I think you would probably still have Chantel report to him, and then she would
Exactly.
delegate. Yeah.
Can we stipulate that this person raised funds for their own salary?
They probably might.
Well, I
We're
mean,
hiring on, and what they bring in should.
I know being a county employee is different, but I also know I've worked with a lot of nonprofits and sat on a lot of boards in which that was absolutely the case. Just so
No, I think we can, we're probably
Evaluate
need
the
to
position
vet
in
that.
like 2 years when it
But
gets started.
that's a great idea.
Always, if they
If
don't
legally we
provide
can do
value,
that. that would be
absolutely.
a good
And if
idea.
they can't support their own salary,
maybe
then
not time to dollar, but just say, we want this position for 2 to 3 years, and then we'll reevaluate it.
Right, absolutely. Yep. And then if legally we can, pay for that out of, get a grant to pay for that, that would be awesome if we can do that. And maybe we're not funding it every single year,
right.
but we'll need to probably, do it up front, but then, moving forward, maybe we don't have to.
Right.
So,
She had mentioned 50 to 60. I wonder if it'd be possible, being in your position, obviously they're not on the payroll yet, maybe 50 to get them hired and cover the rest of the year.
well, and that's just salary. So when she told me 60, my mind said $100,000 for the position because you got benefits on top of it. So, I mean,
You don't think 30 for 6 months and then 20 for benefits?
yeah, I mean,
I guess I'm just thinking not a full year. So if you want to
Yeah.
do whichever salary you pick, divide
And then we'll just deal with her annualized numbers the next EOM.
So for 9 months, it would be 45,000. 165. Yeah, so salary and benefit on 9 months at the $60,000 salary would be just shy of 54,000. That does not include health insurance. What is the, do you recall the exact amount of the employer pay health insurance? I don't know. The employer pay on insurance.
Say 72 and 2011.
2011.
So we'll just figure 2011 times, if it's 9 months, they could have it for 3 months, right? So times 6, it's 12,000. So 70,000, be like 66, 67,000. So get a little buffer. 70,000 should cover it if it's a family coverage for 6 months out of the year, 9 months of a $60,000 salary, and then the 1965 on top. 70,000.
What's our bottom line again, Danny?
1264.
We made no more changes. They will be, what would be in the reserve?
3.2.
3.2.
So it'd be 5.2.
Right.
Plus the.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Which the 3.2 is
Yeah, after.
about where we've been in the other years at this time. If we funded the 70,000, we'd be at 3.31, which is about exactly where we were, I think, last year.
We should go on that number again. Position for, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, how much is the 71,942?
So that's, okay, so just for, so that's 9 months of 60,000, which is a 53 and change right there, the 53. Big bridges, I don't mean, that's all.
The 2011, the $2,011, how many months did you do that?
6. No, 9 months, okay.
If we're doing a 9-month employee, they wouldn't have 9 months, right?
Yeah, so
That's where mine came up a little bit shorter than that. I just did it at 6 months.
what about the FICA on that? Is that what the, yeah,
The 19.
Yeah. So it's 66 with 6 months of health insurance.
Any thoughts?
You can make them a contract employee and not worry about the benefits. 90-day contract. Right, is it mechanical on 90 days? As far as you can go.
That, I don't know.
An employee, you're not required to.
When you do a contract, can't those people go and do other work for other people? They're not ours. We don't own them. We want to own them.
All right.
Make a motion to recommend the budget board the amount of $65,909 to fund a possible grant writer for at least 9 months.
I'll second.
Would that amount go into the purchasing
Yes.
salary and benefit account?
Yes.
In your motion?
Second that.
We got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Benefits are far gonna outweigh 66 grand.
Yeah, and then when you add the extra 6 months of insurance and extra 3 months of salary, it's gonna be higher than that, but I think that even at $100,000, I think it should more than pay for itself.
For giggles, what is that annualized? Just so I can kind of keep that in mind. $71 plus 24.
95,322.
Yeah.
That's why I was factoring in 100,000.
72 plus 24. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so as it sits right now, other than the items that we've already included in our recommendation, we have $2 million in reserve related to employee benefits and whatnot. And then we've got the 1.195 to address these other items that are significant in nature. They're invoice in nature that we don't really have a whole lot of choices on potentially. So we've got some extra money to take care of some of those. While that amount isn't enough to take care of all of them, we're going to Danny's point yesterday, I'm not necessarily comfortable pigeonholing any of that $2 million ARPA interest money towards anything specifically, but we know we're gonna get a significant amount in there that can soak up some of those deficiencies. Whether it's 800,000, 900,000, we're gonna have some in there to be able to address needs if they wind up being more than that 1.1 or that 3.1 that's left.
So you're saying we should evaluate some of the watch list, the orange watch list items right now? I'm sure.
No, I'm saying that I feel like where we're at with going through and then having the 1.195 left on top of the potential 2 million ARPA interest, on top of the 2 million for, employee benefits or whatever else. I think that 1.1, almost $1.2 million to address those potential costs, I think that's a good number. Because all of those, what did that total, Danny? 2.2? 2.4? So if
Some-
all of, no, go ahead.
Some of that CGA can come
No,
That's different.
off. That's okay.
those are different items.
I know Danny's got that CJA over there, but I don't know if we made a motion that actually put it.
I don't know if we did either.
I don't have record of one.
Yeah, so what that consisted of was their anticipated increase for vicinity, OG&E for their electric, and their legal expenses.
Yeah, that's right.
Is there a motion to put that on the watch list?
I'll make that motion,
Is there a second?
since I already have it on there.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. And I do, since we're doing the watch list here and we know that we've got some potential stuff, I do think we need to put two other things on there. I think we need to put for internal county, I would say internal county outside legal expenses. So legal expenses potentially and self-insurance. We're recommending 50,000 to go in there, but the way it's been so far starting out this year, there's a pretty high likelihood we're gonna need to move more into there this year.
I think what's held us up is just waiting for a figure to put it on there. Unless you just wanna take a stab at it. Put in there,
I would say on self-insurance, I mean, it would just be a complete wag, but $100,000. That'd be 3 cycles of 50,000 to be able to go in there. But that's just an absolute wag.
What was the other?
outside legal, inside, outside.
I like that. Yeah, it's small t, lowercase t.
What's your wag on that?
Well, you're wagging a lot.
Placeholder, just 100,000, and then we just go from there? I mean, I don't know. If we're gonna put it on the watch list, we just gotta start something.
Well, when we have,
Can we put wag, like, in parentheses out there?
Yeah.
So we know.
Highlight it in red.
Put it in.
Uh-huh.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, a little.
Leave us a little. Danny.
So just for reference, and Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe most of our outside legal contracts, especially those that we may enter into early on in a fiscal year where there's going to be many months of potential work, those are $150,000 is what we encumber on each of those. So if we have 2 of those, that would be $300,000. Now, if it's April or May, and you're just gonna have a filing appearance and maybe filing a few motions or whatever before the end of the fiscal year, you may not need anywhere near the 150,000. But
I mean, it's just on the watch list.
Yeah.
It's no harm, no foul if we want to do the 300. It's just.
I would like to see 300. That would give us 2 cases beyond what we currently already have. I'm not making a motion, but but if you guys want to do 150 or 450 or whatever, whatever you guys want to do with that.
It's just the watch list. I'll make a motion to add self-insurance for 100,000 and outside legal county for 300,000.
Okay, we got a motion, do we have a second? Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. I think we've pretty well addressed it. Right?
I never did really have a motion when Mike said that he wanted to take his off. And we originally had a motion to put it on.
Okay.
So our motion to remove our amount of 122,238 from the watch list.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Let me ask you a question, because I had it on for 216,738. You need to take the line off completely.
Correct.
So you're not leaving it.
After our, yes.
Okay, yeah.
Because
And
after our
it'll be-
clarification, it's the new number of 122,238.
All right, anything else? Everybody comfortable? So do we want to adjourn or do we want to recess until Monday or Tuesday to give Danny an opportunity to make sure that our numbers and formulas are all right and everybody has an opportunity to make sure that they didn't miss something? I mean, I think we got it, but I mean, I'm open either way.
That's up to Danny.
And I said it, Danny, just because we holler out numbers so fast at you and we don't consider that it takes you time to
I
put it
think
in there.
sometimes you just send it by email, a clarification, but
I'm comfortable with him just sending it updated by email.
Okay.
Unless it's a substantial mistake,
yeah, if it's just something.
then we can,
Then we can on Monday call a special meeting
Oh my
for
goodness.
Wednesday. For Wednesday. So that's what I'm
That's how
saying.
you punch him.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying, that, you know,
It's y'all's pleasure. I'm not here Monday, and then I'm in a class. I'll be in my office on a Zoom class.
We need a motion on these balance to go.
Yeah.
yeah.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion. She's ready. 1,195,480.
Is that including the 2 million? Because it's
Okay.
Well, actually, hang on. It'll also need to be the extra 500,000 that we put in there from the 1.5, or the 4 whatever.
let's figure this out.
What will be the total reserve? I'll just go that way.
Oh,
Yeah, change that back. There you go.
that's all we have available.
Wait, let me.
We need to add 3.675.
1527.
3675 or 76.
3675.
Let's see.
3675076.
Yeah, because I need the, not the total, but the difference.
Right. Because the other amount was already in there,
Right.
so we just need to recommend adding that amount to the reserve.
3,675,076.
Yeah, we may need to recess, just, we can check all this, make sure it's right.
3675.
Seriously.
No, seriously.
Maybe Monday.
Christy, you said, are you, what's your?
I'm basically out Monday and Tuesday. I'm not, I'm off on Monday, but Tuesday I'm on a CPA class. And you can't step away because they do all these little code words, and if you miss it, you don't get credit.
Are you gonna be available?
I'm in the building.
Via, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
anything.
Like text, like if there is an issue and Danny can
I
tell
can
you
always text,
what
no
it
matter
is,
where.
and then if you have a
I always-
concern, you won't be able to be here to vote,
Right, true.
but you can let your concern be known, and then we can communicate
For sure,
that.
for sure.
Okay.
I'm just kind of tied to my office, but
Janice,
I can
your
have Janice
backup?
come down.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and do a recommendation to make this recommendation. That way, Christie's here to vote on the recommendation, and then if we need to make an adjustment, we'll do that on Monday.
Yeah, it would just be some cleanup, maybe if the formula was off or something.
Okay.
Just to correct needed on Monday.
So I need a second on her motion.
Christie, you made the motion to add the additional 3 whatever. And is there a second?
Second.
Got a motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, subject to us coming back and making small or whatever alterations due to formulas, do we have a motion to present this document to budget board as our recommendation for the September supplement?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Got a motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. And if we need to make some alterations, we can do that on Monday. So we can recess. Yes. Does anybody else have any invitations on Monday?
Can you check?
I'm not available. Okay.
2 o'clock on, I've got something.
Okay, so what about 1 o'clock? Because chances are, if we even have
Be
to,
quick.
it's gonna be quick. So
we're clear for Monday.
Does 1 o'clock Monday work for everybody other than Christie?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion to recess until Monday, whatever date that is, the 12th?
Yeah,
1
I'll
p.m.
make the motion to recess until Monday the 12th at 1 p.m.
Okay, and that'll be the same room. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We are in recess. Thanks, guys.